What they elite, as I call them, they create these crises. And so, as you said, the curriculum is broken. The colleges of education are broken. They have devices for dealing with parents who object to them. They form committees and delay and all this sort of stuff. And even if you remove somebody bad, they have to go through the accreditation and certification that the previous person was doing. So that system is locked up. So I encourage people to, try and, returning it, as Trump says, to the state level. But you got to recognize when you turn it to the state level, most state superintendents of education are very supportive of the NEA, and they've gone through these same colleges of education. And the only reason they've gotten their educational doctorates is because they've said, yeah, we agree with all this stuff, and we're going to have comprehensive sex ed and so on. Now, you can try to do certain things. I'm just going to digress for 15 seconds. The Washington Post, for example, when I was in Washington, was befuddled as to why there was this tremendous increase in teen suicides. And so I wrote a letter to the editor and said, when you teach the children, and I gave the example of Maryland, the theme song from MASH to all the kids in the elementary school, and the title is Suicide is Painless, and they have to sing the lyrics, the game of life is lost anyway. Cheating is the only way to win. And when you do that, what do you think's going to happen? So you have a problem with the press. So the alternative media like SteelOnSteel is very important because this is one of the few sources that will help reshape, if we can, the public. But they're very clever. They've dumbed down the population. They're going to create an economic crisis. As I've said before, 2018, you'll have this world currency. So when the money's gone, Social Security is going to run out, and what they'll do is create a situation in which the public will actually call for something. It's like at 9/11. When 9/11 happened, the public said freedom is very important. After 9/11, ABC Washington Post poll said 2/3 would give up some freedoms for security. They'll do the same thing, and that's how they're going to coerce people into accepting socialism. Because capitalism and the engine, they tried what they call the third way under Clinton and Tony Blair. That's not going to work either. So what we're doing is we're heading down this road, and it's going to be very difficult. It'll be very difficult, and that's why I'm predicted in the past that by 2025, Alice Bailey, she said the World Federation of Nations would be taking rapid shape, and that's why they had to get certain people. She was a Luciferian. Hillary Clinton wrote her senior thesis on Saul Alinsky, who has in the front of his book Rules for Radicals an acknowledgement to Lucifer, and Barack Obama. He was the community organizer who thought that Saul Alinsky was wonderful too. So you have a spiritual element to this. You have an economic element to this. You have various crises, but it may be too far. It may be too far, like Putin, for example. We were talking the other day about Putin.
That's what I was really, really wondering about the whole thing. I tend to view this as a last blast from people who are trying to get it back under control. But the moment you see Mr. Trump begin reneging on a whole bunch of stuff, it's not controllable.
That's right. And meeting with Kissinger.
Right. If you can't gain it from having won both houses of Congress and the presidency and a lot of state legislatures, if you can't do the reforms that are necessary to get us back onto a constitutional base, then all is lost and it's going to run forward to its ultimate destiny. And you see where it's going to head. Like I said, about the time they're going to go, hurrah, ta-da-da, we've done it. We've created utopia. The bottom's going to fall out.
That's right. And it's regardless of party. I mean, people forget that Putin actually had a stamp made, a Russian stamp made for Barack Obama's 50th birthday. So, and remember that tape that somebody had secretly where Obama, just before his reelection, told Putin, be patient, but after the election I'll be able to do certain things to work with you. So this isn't just a Republican and Russian thing or whatever. The power elite controls both parties. And Putin sees himself as the modern Peter the Great, who acquired land, and that's how he got his reputation. And Putin said years ago that what he wanted was a, quote, Eurasian Union, a combination of, Europe and Asia, and he would be the kingpin. Now, one person that you look at is Angela Merkel. And you have to remember, Angela, even though she's head of Germany, she grew up in East Germany and went to what's now Leipzig University, but it was called Karl Marx University. So there's some working together there as well. So it's not like if you elect these people, we have won because the other side lost. The power elite, as the Whitneys wanted, and Cecil Rhodes and all of these, is to use a dialectical process and alternate power so the public thinks they have choices, but they really don't.
I mean, we may achieve some interesting things in the interim on it, but as you say, this agenda, this long-flowing idea and ideal has been on running for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah, and this is an example of what you were talking about. When you try to do something there are negative consequences if you succeed. For example, Newt Gingrich is very prominent under Trump. Well, I remember Newt back when NAFTA and GATT were being voted on, he voted for them in the 1990s. He said, look, he was speaking truthfully, Newt Gingrich was. He was the head of the House then, Speaker. He said, look, we have to be honest with the American people. Once we go down this road, once we approve NAFTA and GATT, it's going to be really hard if we want to go back. Because what happens is once you create this global economy and you have transnational corporations, American-based, investing heavily in China or wherever, then if you yank the rug out from under them, what happens is you're going to really hit hard on the 401k investments. And so the average person here who may want, we need those jobs back. Hooray, Trump, get those jobs back here. Well, if you start that in any major way, what's going to happen to those tremendous investments that these American-based companies have made overseas? And secondly, a lot of American-based companies aren't even owned. So Transamerica, I think, is owned by the Dutch. There's a lot of foreign ownership, even though you have American names. And those people could care less about people in, Pennsylvania losing jobs. They just don't care. That's why the steel industry went to Brazil or South America. The textiles went elsewhere instead of in the South, which is what they most were. Now, those high-paying manufacturing jobs, they're not coming back. So even if you succeed, like Trump says, we're going to get those jobs back here, okay, what's the downside of that? I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but there is a downside. These powerful people have so interconnected this global economy that once you try to undo it, while there may be some positive results, there are going to be some tremendously negative results too.
Yeah, and you see that also with the repeal of Obamacare. Well, it's now so entrenched in the system, it's like coming off the wrong kind of drug. You can't just do it, like prednisone. You can't do it. And they knew that. In other words, as they put the football over the goal line in 2008 with Obamacare, they knew that, Dennis.
Yeah, that's why Pelosi said, let's pass it and then we'll look at it.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right.
Yeah, they knew that it was going to go up. This year is going to go up 25%, some of the premiums will. They knew all this in advance because the ultimate goal was to make it like that so the people would scream and yell and say, hey, don't worry, we'll subsidize it. And the public would say, oh, good. Well, if you're going to subsidize it, the public has to realize that, first of all, the subsidy is coming from us, the taxpayers, or it's coming from that printing press, which will cause more inflation. And once you do that, then the federal government will basically be running your healthcare system and decide when Granny lives and when Granny gets the plug pulled on her. And so there's all of these consequences which the public, which has been dumbed down and doesn't really think ahead, is going to be in for.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how if you follow these models, you can predict it. And remember Alice Bailey's whole plan that she channeled from Joel Cole, that was economic and religious and everything else. All right, Dr. Dennis Cuddy, and any of your